I'm so excited to dive into this topic today with Lamont, Michelle, and Luis, and they're going to share some insights. Before we jump in, though, I want them to each give a quick intro of their background and their current role. Let's start with you, Lamont.
Thanks, Erica. Good morning. My name is Lamont Orange, and I'm the Global Chief Information Security Officer for Netscope. I've been in cybersecurity for 25 plus years. I've served as CISOs for security product companies, for corporations, as well as in the consulting roles.
Next, let's hear from you, Michelle.
Thank you, Erica. I'm Michelle Valdez. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at OneMain Financial. I've been in cybersecurity for more than 16 years now. I have spent my last two roles in the financial sector, and prior to that, I spent a lot of time working with the government and the Department of Defense. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Luis?
Hey, Luis Arzu. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for Urban One. We're a media company based out of Silver Spring, Maryland. Before this, I was the Chief Information Security Officer for Farm Credit Financial Partners, and collectively have roughly over 20 years in technology, with the last 10 years being focused on cybersecurity. Glad to be here today as well.
Awesome. Thank you all. Great backgrounds you all have. Merriam-Webster defines diversity as the condition of having or being composed of differing elements or a variety. Today, we will uncover the opportunities we face in our industry, and specifically how the cybersecurity industry can benefit from ensuring teams are composed of the best and the brightest cyber professionals from all walks of life. Let's start with the first question that I'd like to pose today. Having diverse representation in the workplace is powerful. It has proven to lead to innovative thinking and acceptance of various work styles. It is said to create better performing teams and leads many companies to growth on a global scale. So my first question is, with this in mind, why is having a diverse cybersecurity workforce critical to the success of a company? Let's start with Lamont.
So I think that the criticality of having diverse teams really helps the organization spark creativity, spark innovation of products, services. It helps you reach different demographics, which increases your market share. And you can understand how your products and services may fit into places that you didn't think that were naturally an adaptation for those products. The other thing it does is create a culture of inclusion. Everyone wants to buy and consume services within the organization that stands for what they stand for, and that has individuals that either think like they do, look like they do, and have common beliefs. So that period or that spirit of inclusion is very important when you're looking at what services you want to invest your time, energy for promotion, as well as consumption within the broader company.
Michelle?
I think it's very important to make sure that you have people who come from all different backgrounds and experiences. Every single one of those backgrounds will bring value to your team. And I think that particularly in the cybersecurity realm, having diverse thought and varied experiences is critical, because our environment is ever changing and ever evolving. And we should be able to do the same. And I think that takes a diverse group of individuals who can come at a problem or come towards a solution from a different perspective.
Luis, what do you think?
I agree. I think that there's a mutual benefit here, not only for organizations to help them drive revenue and increase in the value that they're providing to end customers, but there also is an opportunity for growth personally for each and every individual that partakes in that diverse group. I think that having diversity in the workforce certainly breeds an opportunity for conflict, but through that conflict, innovation is bred as well.
Great insight. Let's move on to the next question. Cybersecurity Ventures predicts that there will be 3.5 million unfilled cybersecurity jobs globally this year, and that's up from 1 million positions in 2014. For years, we have heard that the shortage of talent in the cybersecurity industry remains at an all-time high. What factors should an organization consider for expanding options with a growing diverse candidate pool of cyber talent? Michelle, let's start with you.
It's a great question, and something that I think a lot of teams grapple with. I think that there is this unseen or invisible barrier that people feel is there to getting into cybersecurity, thinking that people have to come from a technical background. I myself did not come from a technical background, and I'm fortunate to be in the role that I am because I had leaders that believed in my ability and the things that I brought to bear. So looking for skills like people who take initiative, people who can communicate, people who can problem solve. You can find these skill sets in a variety of different previous fields, like whether it's the military or it's different roles within a company. And that brings value to the cybersecurity team, because not only are you bringing a skill set that often is not found readily within the cybersecurity team, these are often skills that are not easy to be taught. I always say I can teach cybersecurity to anybody, because if I was able to learn it, I think anybody can. But what I can't teach is the ability to have critical thinking, the ability to communicate, particularly with our business leaders, the ability to solve risks and solve problems, and just to take initiative. That is so important, and you can find that in any field. It doesn't have to come from a technology or a cybersecurity background.
That's great. Lamont.
So I think you have to understand what is the culture that you're trying to promote within the organization that would show diversity and inclusion. I think you also have to, when you're looking at growing your program, it's also something that you should be able to highlight, because again, your prospective joiners to the organization are going to want to know what you're doing versus what you say you're doing. So you always have to have some proof there. So when you're looking to diversify the organization, I think it's important to have the cultural change that you want to institute as the goal, and have it very visible and showing how that you live this every day. And you can demonstrate that to your prospective joiners as well as those that are in the company. And then the other thing, when you're looking at diversifying your teams, you also have to understand how to get top of funnel activity. So you have to generate diverse candidacy in order to hire diverse people into the organization. So you have to have strategies that will indicate how do you reach the diverse communities.
Luis?
I could not agree more. One example for me is I employed a young lady who came from a communications background back when I was working at Farm Credit. And I can't tell you the difference in perception that she made based on her ability to communicate effectively with the leadership and or her peers on the team, particularly because she came from that different school of thought. She thought it important to make sure that things were characterized the way that they needed to be. And in short, her technical training came to really kind of on the job, and her being sent out to opportunities to learn and grow. Because I fully agree, like Michelle said, that we can teach cyber. It's those other kind of intangible skills that we cannot teach and that we need in this field.
I agree 100%. There's so much in cyber that correlates to so many other skills. And that's really some great insight for our audience today. So let's switch specifically to talk about gender diversity. According to Minorities in Cybersecurity, which is a nonprofit corporation dedicated to leadership and career development, women make up about 50% of the global population. However, representation in the cybersecurity field is roughly 11%. So this is a two-part question. Why do you think this is the case? And why should women consider a career in cybersecurity? Luis, let's start with you.
Sure. We'll take the first part of the question as to why this may be the case in terms of the shortage of women in the cybersecurity field. And I'll keep it simple in saying that sometimes we tend to identify with folks that we see doing other jobs. So by and large, there hasn't been a large representation of women within the cybersecurity field. So other women may feel, well, that's not an opportunity for myself. But it's about time that we start breaking those stereotypes. And I think that with more women entering the cybersecurity field, we would provide opportunity for other women to also see that they can also partake in this very, very lucrative field. I think it's beneficial to women in that they'll see their pays increase as well. They're going to be challenged personally to grow. They're going to be also put in with other individuals of other diverse backgrounds that will allow for them to culturally grow within their career as well. And by and large, I think that they'll see the same opportunities afforded men in this field. But I think that the critical thing is that the breakdown of that stereotype. I think that more women will certainly call other women to come in and join in the cybersecurity workforce.
I love that. And Michelle, with you being a woman in this industry, what do you have to add to that?
Yeah, I will say that it's been a journey as a woman in cybersecurity. What it makes me most happy is that while the first 10 years I was often the only woman in the room, that is starting to change, but I think we have a long way to go. And I think it really starts all the way back in school age. Having organizations, nonprofit organizations, and schools that are really focusing on making sure that young girls are learning and getting exposed to and being encouraged to do things in science and mathematics and computers is so critical, because the leaky pipeline is real. When you look at kids from grade school to middle school to high school, you lose a lot of girls along the way. They feel discouraged. They don't feel that they can be as competitive as the boys in the classroom. Then you get into college age, and while you're seeing a lot of young women coming into the workforce in cybersecurity, they often leave the first few years of their career. Again, I think a lot of that has to do with having other women to be related to be working with, to be mentored by, and even more importantly, have somebody as their advocate. And having women leaders be the advocate for up and coming rising stars, young women in this career field, is so critical. It's critical for male allies to do the same, but I think it's going to be even more important that as we see more and more women filling senior roles in cybersecurity, that we all take the responsibility to be advocates for those who will come after us.
I couldn't agree more. I too am an advocate and promote STEM education and awareness outside of my work, because it's really important to see more of us in this industry. Lamont, what are your thoughts about this?
So I think that there's less exposure to women to cybersecurity careers. I think we've not done a good job with awareness. Cybersecurity, you hear about it. It's lots of opportunity. It's so big, but we haven't necessarily done a very good job of promoting awareness to the different diverse groups and of people. And what I think the other thing that's a catalyst to this is we tend to treat everything as an initiative versus having a continuous exposure that's sustainable. And we continue to expose everyone to these cybersecurity careers. There are lots of organizations that look at this as an initiative and grabbing, the initiative of the day, say individuals that are trying to expose everybody to code, but it's an exposure for a day. It's an exposure for a month, instead of building a sustainable program for this continuous exposure and how this translates into careers, how this can help change your social and economical status, and just how it can continue the cycle of improvement and betterment of some of the services and products that we consume. And I think for the other side of the question is, why should women consider cyber? I think it's an opportunity to leverage innovation and creativity of a fast-paced occupation that you can get no other place. It's a disruption of and transformation of the current norms that breed limitless opportunities. And that may say, oh, that's somewhat of a big response. Well, cybersecurity is a big field. And I think when you bring in a different perspective of thinking, a different perspective of execution, and a different view, you get a new way of looking and a new way of solving problems that we deal with every day. And I think those are limitless opportunities. There's always a need in society, in communities, in the world. We just haven't had the right view of how to approach and solve it. And I think that's why women should consider this field. You bring a different view and a different perspective.
Our next question focuses on components that are very important for having a high-performing team. So education, engagement, collaboration, all of those things are important, and it seems to be widely understood. However, many companies still experience issues with retaining talent in the cybersecurity industry. In your experience, what is it that you do to keep top cyber talent engaged and wanting to stay with your organization? Lamont.
That is a great question. Retention seems to be as charted as a problem, as much of a big problem as it is finding skills. So I think what we have to do is go back to the basics. We have to show our team members that they are appreciated. We have to be very transparent about their impacts to the business as well. Let them show that their contribution actually makes a difference. We also need to empower the teams and the team members, and that gives them a piece of, some of that satisfaction and ownership of the roles and the job that they're executing. And I think we have to continue to live the motto of driving candidates and driving diversity. When you create diversity, equity, or equality and inclusion programs in your organization, you have to live that. It is not it's not an initiative. It's a cultural shift and a cultural change. And you have to continue to feed that into the culture of the company and execute it on a daily basis. So not only do we say it, but we actually do it. And I think that will help your team members want to be part of that company and be part of something special.
Luis, can you share some insight on that?
Absolutely. In terms of retention, it certainly is, it proves to be a challenge. But I think that oftentimes we misconstrue what really drives an individual to stick to a team or an organization, and we kind of set a price to it and say, oh, perhaps this person is interested in higher pay, right, or bonuses or other kind of fringe benefits. But I think that in my experience, I've been able to succeed in retaining candidates, particularly because I make sure that I'm talking to them. You make sure that you're mentoring folks, that you're growing folks, that you're providing them opportunities of responsibility, accountability, and ownership. They want to feel challenged. They want to feel as if they're contributing, much more so than anything else. I also want to feel that they're part of a collective team that's really driving to make a difference for the organization and the organization's customers. So I find that organizations that focus on mentorship, development, growth, and opportunities for education see a lot more success in the retention of employees as candidates.
Michelle, what can you add to that?
I absolutely agree. I think that it's critical that you take the time to understand each individual's motivations. What makes them excited about coming to work? What is important to them? And then you have to make sure that you provide them with the opportunities that meet those passions, that meet those requirements. Some may be driven by financial incentives. Others may be driven by having the ability to have time to do things like passion projects and work on something exciting and new that's outside of the day-to-day. But I think having challenges for each individual to meet what their goals are, being transparent and having open communication with them, and providing them with the opportunities to grow, to be successful, to have impact, I think is really important to ensuring that you retain those talented people.
I couldn't agree more. I wish there was so much more that we could talk through today. We've covered some really key areas around this, but we don't have full time to go deeper. But I have one more question that I'd like to pose to each of you. Since identifying talent continues to be a challenge, at the pace we're going, businesses will continue to be behind. What is it that you would tell another leader who's looking for advice to grow and diversify their cybersecurity team? Michelle, what are your thoughts?
It's going to be what happened for me. Take a chance on somebody. Take a chance on building the capability and the skill set in somebody who's excited and wants to learn it, but just doesn't have the background to do it. Look for those soft skills, look for those hidden talents, look for those things that you just can't teach, and be willing to take a chance and grow that individual. That to me is just one bit of advice that I will give everybody, because I could not be more lucky to be where I am today because of people who took a chance on me.
That's amazing. Luis?
I'll connect this to a little bit of my personal experience, and I think that I'll proceed that by saying that organizations should absolutely definitely start taking a chance, just as Michelle said, with individuals, and also equip them with the resources, the mentorship, and the support to certainly move their careers forward. But I'm a graduate also of the Per Scholas, which is a nonprofit organization based in the Bronx. Many years ago, back in 1998, I was there. And today I sit on the board of Per Scholas. Per Scholas is now turned from an organization where back then I was building computers for schools that we were effectively donating and selling to schools, to now doing workforce development. So they're working with a huge talent base of individuals and minorities, particularly, that are really creating funnels and pipelines that are really going to benefit employers. So I think that connecting with organizations such as Per Scholas, such as the GCC, to really drive in that talent pipeline will be very super efficient for organizations to see a benefit from the diversity of talent that they're getting from these other organizations.
Lamont, what can you share with us on that?
So that's another great question. We are absolutely in a space of innovation with our teams as we continue to change our operating paradigm, moving from on-premise to cloud and hybrid infrastructures. So as you're building this diversification across your cybersecurity teams, I think the one thing you have to do is identify what are some of your focal points for diversity. What are your objectives? What are you really trying to accomplish? And how does that tie back to the business? Everything should be business driven. Identify your impact metrics. Metrics usually is a bad word when we talk about diversity, but I think there are impact metrics. Again, how do you affect the bottom line? How do you show that you created a competitive advantage, increase market share, increase a broader cultural view in the organization? And then be transparent with that plan and have capstones that are very simple around awareness. How have you discussed this within the organization? And how do you keep it in front of them? Around innovation, what things did you change for the better by creating diverse opportunities in the organization and living it as part of your culture? How have you trained the organization, and what components would you like the organization to grab as part of that training? Training can be very broad and very big. So you need to go back to your focal points and make sure that your training supports those focal points. And then the final one, I'd say, how do we drive culture? Those should be your capstones. How do I drive this into my culture to make it continuous, repeatable, and something that we do as part of executing our business?
Great insight, everyone. Thank you so much. We really have observed today that what we need are companies and leaders who dare to think differently and to be different. Our industry, just as many others, generally really benefits from tapping into talent with different backgrounds, experiences, intellects, the list goes on. Because it's in mixing all of those attributes together that you get the very best creativity and innovation, as we've discovered today. I just want to say thank you so much to our panelists for their thoughts today, sharing their ideas around leadership. And again, to our sponsors, and especially to our audience who's taken time out today to listen in. Thank you.